What do you think of Snake Plissken?
Man, wildly shallow character, like most characters in the movie. Everybody's just kind of doing what they're doing. Motivations are very low. Such a try-hard visual, and I get
really?
it.
I think it's pretty good.
I'm thinking of it as I'm seeing this for the first time in 1981. Like, I don't have the context of the rest of the 80s here. This is kicking off the 80s.
You wouldn't think, wow, that's badass, if you've never seen a guy with an eye patch.
The white snow camo pants in an urban environment at night just don't work.
Oh, dude, those were
Super cool. Also, nice boots.
Hey, nice boots.
Nice boots. Nice boots.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Just Play It podcast with your hosts. I'm James.
I'm Nick.
And this is the podcast where we just pick a movie and just play it, pick it apart. The movie we are talking about this week is an 80s iconic movie, John Carpenter's Escape from New York.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, James. I don't think you've seen this one yet.
No, have you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It had been a while, so it was a very enjoyable rewatch.
How long ago did you watch it?
It's been well over 15 years. It was one of those movies my dad showed me back when I was, a freshman in high school. It was a lot better then.
Mr. Justice has, for the people that don't know, this guy watches a lot of movies. He's probably seen every single movie that's ever been released.
I would honestly, no hyperbole here, say he is in the top 0.3% as far as number of movies watched in their lifetime among the entire population of the earth.
He'd be in some elite company. Well, speaking of elite company, this movie stars Kurt Russell, who just had a ride in the 80s. Still relevant today.
Yeah, he really, you just think about this movie. This movie defined the 80s, and he said, I struck gold, and this is my character. And he just rode this one throughout the 80s.
And what I was kind of researching and reading was that Kurt Russell at this point in his career had done a lot of Disney movies, which I am very unfamiliar about. I don't know about what titles he's been in.
He was the voice of Copper in Fox and the Hound.
Okay.
So there's that. He was also, I know he was in a lot of TV shows, a lot of, made-for-TV movies. He was just very around, but he wasn't, to my knowledge, he wasn't quite a feature star yet. The way he exploded into the 80s.
Right. And that's how I know him. Not even really seeing the movies, but just the pop culture, the significance in American Western cinema. People always reference Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China, Mad Max as kind of quintessential 80s action movies, which I don't, necessarily disagree with.
Not at all.
Yeah, Kurt Russell, he's in it. This is where he kind of broke out of that Disney mold. It also stars Lee Van Cleef, who probably has the coolest name of the cast.
Agreed.
He's kind of known for Westerns. He was in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That's where I recognized him from.
Right, so the Cleefness is in here. It also stars Harry Dean Stanton and Isaac Hayes.
So are you familiar with Isaac Hayes? The second I saw the name, I was like, I thought that's who it was.
When he shows up in the movie and I'm looking at him, I'm thinking this guy looks familiar. And I'm doing a deep dive of his IMDb, and honestly, there's not one thing I've seen him in that I can visually recognize him from. I guess he just has one of those faces that it just seems familiar. But go ahead, Nick. Where do we know Isaac Hayes from?
So I knew the name.
And the name.
I knew the name right away. And Isaac Hayes is a composer, and he is most famous for doing the main composition on Shaft, the super iconic Shaft theme song. Shaft. The whole deal. He's also a very funky 70s, 80s musician. So that's how I knew him, is that he was like big in like kind of that disco funk era. If you haven't, look him up on Spotify. He's great. I love his stuff. He's got a groove to him, man. So once I saw that, I was like, Isaac Hayes. I didn't know he acted. I didn't know he acted.
Are you going to avoid the elephant in the room of what I thought you were going to say? He's the voice of Chef on South Park.
That I didn't know. I didn't look that far into it.
I thought you were going to say that.
No.
Hello, children.
Oh my gosh, he is, isn't he?
You know, going through the titles he's been in, I thought, yeah, I haven't seen any of these projects or shows or shorts or movies. And I did see that he did the Shaft theme song. And then the top billed thing that I saw was South Park, and he's the voice of Chef. I thought that's where you were going.
That was not where I was going at all. I completely forgot about that now that you say it.
Because I've seen the name on the credits of South Park many times. So I thought that's where you're going. But hey, you know what? If you know him as a composer, I'm pretty impressed.
I know him as a composer. I've heard him on several podcasts. He's a very talented guy, and he's pretty funny.
Pretty eclectic line of work Isaac's got going for him. Speaking of composing, Mr. John Carpenter, director of this, composes his own music, and he does that for a lot of his movies. Most famously, as we all know, Halloween, the Michael Myers little creepy theme song.
Yeah, and I want to get into that more because there's a few scores in here, if you want to call them scores,
that
compositions that are just, I don't know,
or just out of this world for you.
Yeah, we'll get there. We're definitely. Right. I don't want to get over our skis here, but
we don't want to give all the way good stuff in the beginning.
No. So
I'm gonna set up this movie real quick with the log line. In 1997, when the U.S. president crashes into Manhattan, now a giant maximum security prison, a convicted bank robber is sent in to rescue him. Okay, Nick. So when I didn't know much about this movie, I have looked it up before in my past and read something along the lines of New York is walled off or it's a quarantine zone or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
When I read this log line, I thought, oh, God, wow. That's a wild setup. The president crashes into Manhattan, which is a giant prison. This is going to be a hell of a movie.
I will say this about the log line. It's about as correct of a sentence you can have for a movie. Some log lines are a little misleading. Some log lines don't really give you enough information. This log line right here is exactly what the movie's about.
I mean, when we get into it, there's not too much to the plot or what to expect after the first 15 minutes of this movie.
No. So let's jump into it, James. Let's do a little plot talk.
Plot talk.
Let's run through some of our favorite parts of this movie here.
Okay, well, I got to start out with the very beginning being my favorite part because it just opens. A lot of old movies have done this, and some current ones, but a lot of old movies just kind of throw it in your face like, hey, these are the rules, and this is the world we're in. It immediately begins with 1988. Crime has risen 400%. The island of Manhattan is now a maximum security prison.
400%.
What happened?
It's a lot of crime.
Yeah. There's no explanation, and that's just the facts, and I need to accept it. And Manhattan is now just a dumping ground for prisoners for the entire country. I'm assuming. Unless they have made other cities maximum securities. I thought it was only Manhattan because it was an island.
Yeah, let's not overthink it here. It's just an island for prisoners. We're never privy to the, what gets you thrown into this prison. Can we appreciate real quick just kind of the way that they set up Manhattan? It looks like an old school arcade video game. It actually, I kind of really like the special effects on it, where they have the little map of Manhattan, but it's like in the old school, like green glow of like the first gen computers. And they're built, showing the wall around it, like do 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 do.
Yes.
And then the Statue of Liberty Island. They call it Statue of Liberty Island, not Ellis Island. And Statue of Liberty Island is like the command center. And
Mm-hmm.
you're like, and they're like showing you all on this map. And I was like, I kind of like that. That's like, it dates it a little bit, but I think in a really good way. It kind of shows you the technology that's going on at that time.
Yeah, the technology and the style of the time.
Yep.
So I did appreciate that too. And, speaking of computer generated images, there was some actually not half bad skyline shots of this post-apocalyptic Manhattan. I was like, wow, this doesn't look terrible. This doesn't look like it's from 1981. There was some other special effects that look like they were from 1981, but a couple of the establishing shots were actually, they aged pretty well with me.
We're thrown in pretty quick to the issue that we need to overcome here.
Just the world we're in. Yeah. This is going to be the main setting of this movie.
And we run into an issue. Air Force One has been hijacked.
Yeah. They're calling out David 14 is the distress code or the code of the aircraft. And I don't know how they decipher it or what software they're using. Doesn't matter. But they decipher last minute.
The future. Don't worry about it.
That it's Air Force One. Really not far off in the future. It opens up with 1988 saying crime has risen 400%. And this is supposed to be 1997. So 9 years they got this together. They got that big ass wall up. They got the station set up on Statue of Liberty Island. When number 45 president was trying to erect the wall in Mexico, that took a long time to get approvals and budgets. And
do you think the Don got his timeline from this movie when he's like, we can do this in 8 years? Do you think that's where his timeline came from? And he's like, yeah, it could be 100 feet tall. Like I've seen it done.
Have you seen Escape from New York? They could do it.
They built a beautiful wall.
They put a whole wall around Manhattan.
It's a beautiful wall.
It's possible. That'd be believable. But it's not believable. It's just kind of astounding that they got this whole operation set up below a decade.
The whole country was on the same page here.
They were just all in. They're like, yeah, you know what? Crime is up 400%. We got to go all in on the maximum prison idea.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I think crime in New York actually did spike 400% in the 90s. So
so they predicted the future. I mean, I know New York in the 70s and 80s was like not really a good place, which is kind of the inspiration of this foundation of the plot. But yeah, I just have to say hats off to the government for putting their work and money into a project and getting it done in record time. So,
hey,
good on them.
Different times.
Air Force One hijacked by some domestic terrorists, and the president, who's played by Donald Pleasance, I can't really recognize him from too much other stuff looking him up, but it looks like him and John Carpenter were frequent collaborators together.
Okay.
And he goes into this pod.
The pod.
Which is essentially a red egg with a presidential seal on it. No seatbelt, no harness, no helmet, just some yoga mat pads on the inside, and I guess they just yeet them off the plane.
I think we liked the ideas of pods in 80s movies. Like in the future, we thought there was going to be a lot of pods. Like people go into pods, we lock people in pods.
Pods are relevant in sci-fi stuff today.
Yeah, but I'm saying like in the 80s, everything had a pod.
It was a big pod era.
It was. The Jetsons was just everybody, there was a lot of pods. Escape pods, mini flying pods. Like we were like the future is pods.
I don't really know how this pod works. There's no rockets on it.
That's the thing. They never explain how any of the pods work back then. There's just pods. They're just cure all the pods work.
Magnetic force where it can slow down like when it comes crashing down to the earth. I don't know.
If trouble's a brewing, jump in your pod. Those are the rules.
All I'm saying is looking at that red egg, I would expect to open it up and find scrambled president.
No, it's the pod.
Air Force One launches the president out in this pod. Of course, it's over the island of Manhattan, which is just a lawless, walled-off area for prisoners.
Real quick, don't you think that like flying over that would be like a no-fly zone, especially for Air Force One?
No, and that's exactly what I thought of when I read the logline and kind of saw what was happening live in the movie. I thought, why are they anywhere near this place? Like this movie does so well, which is not explaining a whole lot. I'm just going to assume that the domestic terrorists piloted it over New York.
Okay.
Because they were on their way. Well, we don't know where they're flying from, but if you were to assume DC and they were going to a summit, I don't know where it was to meet with the then Soviet Union and China, which are still, kind of touchy subjects today, but here we are. They got that right, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where they were supposed to be flying to, but maybe how'd they get on board?
A lot of
It's not like a commercial plane, like where it's like you could
yeah,
pose as a passenger and be like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna go hijack this plane. This is just Air Force One.
Air Force One.
This is supposed to be authorized members only. Triple checked.
I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so he lands in this walled off Manhattan prison and is immediately captured by
this group called the Crazies. We don't know they're called the Crazies yet, but that's their name.
That's their name, the Crazies. Romero is one of the guys' name. Frank Doubleday, cool name. Looked him up, didn't really see him in much.
Again, kind of like Donald Pleasence, kind of played around with John Carpenter projects, and that's pretty much it. It looked like his acting career at least, was kind of retired in the 90s anyways. But yeah, he plays this super creepy guy. Kind of looks like a caveman clown.
He looked Beetlejuicy to me.
That's really good. I wrote down Pennywise caveman, but I think urban Beetlejuice caveman would suffice.
Beetlejuice.
It's
my next Halloween costume, urban Beetlejuice.
His opening scene, he's just walking up so funny, and he's like hissing at the police force. Lee Van Cleef, who plays Police Commissioner Hawk, he's kind of like the main guy, boots on the ground going in. And Romero, who is played by Frank Doubleday, he basically shows a severed finger of the president and says, if you touch me, if you don't leave in 30 seconds, he's dead. He just starts counting down. And then, the police force kind of catch a clue like, hey, the president crashed in the worst place possible and is taken hostage. These guys don't mess around. We got to get out of here. We need to hire somebody to extract him out of here who is already in the prison.
Now, this police chief Hawk, don't you think the better role would be warden of the prison? I don't know what this police chief's jurisdiction is, but I definitely was like warden, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely his job is definitely more of a warden, but I believe his title in the movie is police commissioner.
Okay. Nitpicking anyway.
Save the nitpicks for last, all right?
We
got to get through. We got to finish setting up this plot. So Hawk brings in Snake Plissken, who is a eye patch wearing badass Kurt Russell.
Again, never know where the eye patch came from.
One of the many things they don't explain. He was a decorated military war hero turned bank robber. I believe they verbally mentioned that in the movie. Again, don't really dive deep into it. They bring in Snake because he's had military experience. He seems like a capable guy. Hawk essentially gives him the opportunity for a full pardon if he can extract the president. Oh, and by the way, he just gave him probably a lethal injection that will kill him in 24 hours. 24 hours to get the job done, or he dies.
That's our plot. What I wrote down is this. So the first 20 to 30 minutes is just, again, the setup, and then learning the legend of Snake Plissken. Right? He's this legend, apparently. We'll
Snake.
Deal with that more later. But there was a funny part, because it's going to come up later, so I want to call it out now, where the police commissioner Hawk says, Mr. Plissken, and he goes, call me Snake. So I'm just bringing that up. Remember that, because it's coming up later.
I'll remember. They kind of bring it up quite a bit.
So here we go. Snake has to go in. He knows how to fly these very small futuristic jets.
Yeah. Now, was this a glider plane? I'm assuming
some sort of futuristic glider.
I think it was a glider, because I thought it was a mistake on the movie, because there was that initial plane that was taking off, and then the Kurt Russell Snake plane was trailing behind it, and there was a cable on it, and I thought they left in the cable by accident, but I think that is just what it is. I think it just got kind of flung up into the sky by this actual internal combustion jet, so the glider can go in all stealth.
That would make sense. And they land on the World Trade Centers. Or He lands on one of the World Trade Centers. And from here, he's now in it. He's boots on the ground, man. He is ready to be.
I like the way this movie's set up. I like this I like the mission, the go in quiet, and you're on your own. He's in this fully functioning city, besides all the trash and random fires. These prisoners kind of got it nailed down. They got electricity. Police commissioner mentioned how they have a gasoline source. They've converted cars to run on steam.
Yeah.
They're pretty smart, pretty crafty.
I feel like that should be a really good invention. If the prisoners created a version for cars to run on steam at the rate that they can drive in the movie, that would have been world-changing technology.
They should patent that and kind of, maybe offer some pardons to the engineers in there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But there's still a guy who does a lot with gasoline in the movie. So I wasn't quite sure where that breakdown. Are we at 80-20 steam gas? Where are we at here?
It seemed like there was a lot of internal combustion happening. There was one device in there that looked like it was steam powered, and it's like, I don't know, the Duke has it. I don't know what it was.
There's still a lot engines revving. I was like,
yeah,
that's gas.
And I saw, I see exhaust coming out of the cab and the Cadillacs. I'm like, okay, so these are gas. I was like, I'm not seeing any steam engines, but okay. Well, this place is just its own anomaly because they also have a song and dance show going on. Some prisoners got together, rehearsed a number, choreographed some dance moves, got costumes, and also got the word out that they're putting on the show because there's other prisoners in the audience. Snake walks in because the presidential tracker is beeping off at this location. And there's a whole play going on, a musical. In the crowd, we got one of our main side characters that will be featured in this movie. His name is just Cabby because guess what? He drives a cab. He's played by Ernest Borgnine. I'll tell you what, this guy has been in a lot of stuff, character actor, but we know him as a very near and dear character. Nick, do you know which one that is?
I do, and I heard it in his voice when I was watching the movie.
Evil!
It is the voice of Mermaid Man from SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was delighted to learn that.
I also know him from another movie, which I hope you have seen, which is Basketball. He is Ted Denslow, the first owner of their team and from what the Denslow Cup is named after. So that's where I recognized him from.
Gotcha. See, I didn't see. I've seen Basketball on Comedy Central in passing, but I haven't actually sat down and watched it. So
that may need to change eventually.
That's his latest. His latest role is Mermaid Man from SpongeBob.
Yes, it is. Before
he unfortunately passed away. Looks like he lived a long life.
So we meet him. We get to what is probably one of my most frustrating themes that go through this movie.
Okay.
And that is that everyone knows who Snake Plissken is. And I don't know how everyone knows who Snake Plissken is. Where he's like, you're Snake Plissken. They just know it from his face. That's a distinct face with the eye patch and the long hair. But the next thing he says to him was, I thought you were dead. This is going to be a theme throughout the film where everybody goes, aren't you supposed to be dead? I thought you were dead. How are you alive? We don't know what incident it was in which he was supposed to be killed and or where he miraculously escaped death.
Well, he's got an eye patch to prove it.
But it definitely bothers me that this whole he's supposed to be dead thing.
Maybe if they brought it up that first time, like once, you kind of shake it off and be, oh, cool. There's some sort of backstory that happened and I'm interested, but it's a mystery. But they keep saying it. And You're just like, okay, are we supposed to know? I feel like I'm missing a piece of the puzzle here.
And that's my thing. But I will say it does go to what I think to be the only way that this movie works is that it just is what it is. It's like, we're not explaining this. You just need to accept this and we need to move on with the story now.
It do be like that.
That is the only way this movie works, is if it just does what it does. I mean, if you look at some of the costumes that some of the government officials have, they're like really cheap Darth Vader masks. Why are they that way? We don't know. It looks really stupid, but they're just like, this is the future. Deal with it.
Oh no, there's a lot of that
So that's the only way this movie really works.
on both sides.
Big time. So yeah, we meet Cabby.
Cabby's in the audience. He's just enjoying the show. Snake continues to follow the tracking device. He kind of goes into this downstairs underground section.
Cabby tells him, you don't want to go down there.
Cabby knows all. He's been in the city for a long time.
What horrific act did Cabby commit to be sentenced to life in this Manhattan hellhole?
A DUI. No, I don't know. I honestly think he just stuck around. He was a cab driver in Manhattan. They walled it off. He was like, I'm not leaving.
Because he mentioned he'd been driving a cab there for 30 years.
Yeah. So
So did some guys just stay trapped?
Either he did something horrific or he's too stubborn to leave his beloved island of Manhattan.
Either way,
deal with it.
Either way, it's horrifying.
Deal with it. We don't care. This is how it is. It do be like that. It is what it is. All right?
Okay.
Move on, Nick.
Okay.
So we run into this, I called him an NPC character because Snake kind of comes up to him and he just starts saying generic things like he's about to start a side quest. I don't remember what it was. Just like kind of off-putting.
It's like nice boots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He like walks out. He's like, nice boots. I like those boots. Hey, you're not from around here. Or it's, just kind of generic stuff. I was like, this is a weird encounter. And doing a deep dive on who this guy is. Nick, we just saw this guy in a movie we watched. This is Carmen Philpe. He played the animated bum in 8 Crazy Nights. He played a bum in this movie. Remember we were going through his IMDb credits and he had a lot of bum credits?
Yeah. Talk about getting typecast.
He was a bum in 1981. He was a bum in 2001.
Are you happy to just have a gig that you can get typecast for constantly?
Yes.
I would put money on the fact that he is the bum in Mr. Deeds who tells the kids to drop out of school. I would put good money on that, actually.
When did Mr. Deeds come out? Was that like
early 2000s? I don't know.
Okay. I mean, well, this guy's been in a lot of stuff. Not Mr. Deeds, but he was in The Wedding Singer. He was the old man in Bar.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but a lot of bum,
big bum energy,
big bum guy over here. So I had to bring that up just because it was a weird encounter, and this guy popped up again.
So Snake continues on through this basement. He's tracking the president on this, kind of GPS tracker, and he gets to this guy who's getting his ass kicked. And he goes, "Mr. President."
Is that what was happening?
Yeah, that guy was getting pounded.
Yeah, it was really kind of unsettling. I thought he was getting his arm cut off or something. Or like, I don't know. It's kind of dark down there. I didn't really see too much.
I mean, either way, he's getting pounded. So he's basically getting it good some way or another from this big guy. And Snake knocks out the big dude and says, "Mr. President." Turns out it's not the president. It's just another old crazy guy.
It's just some fat guy.
Because, of course, why would it be the president,
That'd be too easy.
40 minutes into the movie. We can't have this.
Plot would be over.
Yeah. And then one of the more unsettling things happens as he's standing in the basement. All of a sudden, hands just start shooting up from the floor. There's sewer people. I can't even think about how flimsy this floor is. It'd be like walking on sheetrock, apparently, because people are just punching up through it, trying to grab at them. It looked like they were coming from the depths of hell. There's like this orange glow coming from the sewers. Could be. I think it could be fire.
Was that happening in this scene? And
yeah,
in that under that downstairs scene, or was this on the street?
This is a downstairs scene.
Oh,
yeah, a downstairs scene. Now they could have bonfires in the underground, probably do. So that would explain some flames down there. But I don't know why these people chose when Snake Plissken was down there to make their assault. But I mean, they just destroy the floor and they just start coming after him, just in a wild sequence. But there's some really good visual effects that happen here. So he's running And eventually an arm comes out, just an arm from like behind a wall trying to like reach for Snake.
Oh yeah. This is after. So he's like gone up to the street, and
he's running.
This is when he's back on the street level, and then they start coming out of the sewers, and then start. Why did they chase him? Just because he's not a crazy.
Just because they're chasing. That's what I'm saying. I don't know why they chose this exact moment for this assault on the building they were in.
Oh, that lady, and her credit is right here. Season Hubley. This is literally her title. Girl in Chock Full of Nuts. Now, Chock Full of Nuts is this random store that Snake goes into.
Yeah.
And she just has this one scene with Kurt Russell, basically just kind of setting up who these crazy people are. And she says, oh yeah, I just got stuck on the wrong side of town at the wrong time. So now I'm just holed up here for the night. And she explains that the crazies are coming out for their once a month grocery run. They need to go get food.
That's what it is, yeah. And she gets swallowed up by the sewer people. She is never seen again.
Yeah, they just bust through the floor and then I guess just eat her. I don't know. So yeah, he's running away, and I love this was a quintessential 80s movie moment. I think he's going up a fire escape, gets into this just abandoned apartment. There's a prosthetic arm just kind of hanging around the corner from the window. And Snake just boom blasts that arm, and the static arm just breaks away from the special effect with some blood, and there's just a
It looked like if you taped like a firecracker to the middle of like a mannequin arm and you set it off. That's what the explosion of the arm looked like to me.
And that's exactly what it was. It was a mannequin arm with some sort of small explosive attached to it.
Totally. And then he needs to jump from one room to the next room. And so he takes his machine gun. I can never decide if it's quite like a shotgun or a machine gun, but it's a multi-purpose weapon.
Doesn't matter.
And he basically
it's got more range than Snake Plissken's emotions. I'll tell you that.
So he shoots this oval into the wall with his machine gun. Da, 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 da. So it's a person size. And then he like jumps through it with his shoulder. First off, if you know anything about buildings from the 70s, you can go through those walls, no problem. But number two, that wall was just styrofoam. When he jumped through it, it didn't break or shatter. It just like snapped in half and just kind of hung there.
You know a thing or two about jumping through walls. We've done a similar stunt with actual drywall. Thank you very much.
I did see it and I was like, damn, styrofoam may have been better.
I don't know why we didn't do styrofoam. We didn't do styrofoam. We used real glass to smash a bottle over someone's head who was wearing a helmet, but we're stupid.
Snake makes his getaway. And, of course, who's right there to pick him up? The cabbie.
Freaking cabbie swoops him on up.
And this is why I think the cabbie might have a dark past, is because to make the crazy stop chasing him, he just lights a Molotov cocktail and tosses it at him.
Yeah, this is a pretty great moment, actually. He's just like, oh, yeah, this is like going around here. And he throws it out the window. It kind of blows up like a firecracker as well.
Yeah, it engulfs everything in flames.
Some movie enhancement there.
And then Cabby kind of tells us the lay of the land in this Manhattan prison.
He knows everything. He knows everyone. He's the guy to know.
So we learn that the president of the prison is Duke, a man by the name of Duke. And then we learn of another character named Brain. And so Cabby's going to bring Snake to Brain.
Yeah, Cabby's kind of the expositional tool in the movie, just kind of explaining to the clueless audience of who's who of this world. So he brings him to Brain's headquarters. We don't really know too much about him. We just know his name, and he must be a smart guy or involved in the hierarchy of this de facto class system we got going on in this prison. Turns out Snake knows Brain and calls him Harold. He's from his old bank robbing days. We learn here, finally, something that's not just thrown out there and we're left to chew on with no answer. We learned that Harold, now known as Brain, was previous partners with Snake in their bank robbing days, along with Fresno Bob, who Harold/Brain double-crossed and pretty much left in the dust. Job went south, and they've been on bad terms ever since.
I wonder if Fresno Bob's actually dead.
I really want to know where Fresno Bob is. First off, guy from Fresno, poor guy.
Unpredictable. He's a wild card.
Yeah. And Brain, he's played by Harry Dean Stanton. He's been in hundreds of stuff. He's been in Alien, The Green Mile, Pretty in Pink, Twin Peaks. When I found this out, I was tickled. He's the security guard in The Avengers. That's when Bruce Banner crashes through that abandoned building and as the Hulk and shrinks down to normal size. And there's a security guard that finds him and says, "Are you an alien?" He's like, "Huh? Are you an alien from outer space?" It's like, "No." It's like, "Oh, okay." And that's Brain from Escape from New York.
That is Brain.
Pretty neat.
So Snake explains to Brain what's happening. Hey, I need to get the president. You know where he is. Basically, another part of this movie is if we can't get the president out, we're just going scorched earth on the island. That's basically what the United States government told Snake.
We got less than 24 hours.
So, which is a weird, I don't know why they would go through all this. They should have just went in guns a-blazing in the first place, the government, to get the president back.
We don't need to.
I'm not asking questions.
Just accept it.
So here is where my favorite part of the film is.
Oh.
Duke rolls up in his car. The cabbie's like, "That's Duke's coming. Like, Duke is coming."
That's the Duke. That's the Duke. I know his car, the way it sounds.
And all of a sudden, the funkiest score starts to play. I thought it sounded like Lowriders. It's like dun 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 dun. Yeah, it kind of sounded like that. Now, I know you said that Carpenter does his own stuff, but I wonder if Isaac Hayes maybe got to compose his own score in this movie, because it had some good funk to it.
I don't think a white guy can do that. So
I really don't think so.
You know what? I didn't check the credits, and after you brought that up in the beginning about how he's a famous composer and has done a lot of work in music, it's very much possible he composed his own kind of intro songs or his on-screen time scores, which would be a cool move.
We learn about the funk master general himself, the Duke, and now the guys have to kind of get off the street. Like they don't want a confrontation with the Duke.
Yeah, he rolls up to Brain's headquarters. I don't know why. I don't know if it was a planned meeting or not. Essentially, Snake just hijacks a car, one of the Duke's convoy, and they drive to the other part of town where the president apparently is. Seems to be in this train yard, and we're thinking, all right, we're kind of halfway through the movie. He's about to reach the president, but of course, it's not going to end right here. Something's going to go wrong
right here. So he gets captured.
Go wrong. He gets captured by Duke's goons, who, by the way, are dressed like pirates. Remember we were talking about futuristic costumes and what they were doing? Okay, so can you name a couple apocalyptic movies that have come out in the last 20 years?
Fury Road.
Well, excluding that, because that's like got origins in the 80s. Yeah. I'm talking
Wall-E, Book of Eli is a great one.
Children of Men. It's like, what are the costumes in those movies?
Ragged old clothes.
They're regular clothes that are ragged. They're clothes that they had in that time period, except they have aged and got more holes in them. What do apocalyptic movies do in the 80s? They get hella extravagant. Mad Max. Was that BDSM?
Yeah.
Like leather sex stuff.
They're a bunch of leather daddies.
There's hella gimps in there. And in this movie, they're dressed like pirates, kind of like fashionable colonels.
Is this a great time to also bring up when there are a tribe of Native Americans present?
I mean, you might as well, because again, they don't explain that.
There's a tribe of Native Americans. Well, it's about this point in the movie when that helicopter comes in and they give their demands, and they're getting flagged down by this group of Native Americans.
Was that exclusively Native Americans in that scene, or was it? Yeah,
that's why two of them had spears, and then they ran off when the helicopter came. I would notice that. I was like, "What?"
I remember there was that scene, and I believe that's when they were trying to kind of bargain with the government. So
we got.
Go ahead.
Urban Beetlejuice, pirates, and engines, and that's where we're at so far.
You need to accept it. And Kurt Russell has an eye patch, and they don't explain it.
So Snake gets caught. Brain and his gal Maggie escape.
Maggie's played by Adrienne Barbeau, by the way, who is a very useful character. Doesn't really say a lot. She kind of acts at the right time. And makes a lot
of kind of a badass, we learned.
Is pretty much a badass till the end.
Yeah.
I guess we learn here what Duke wants. He wants the 69 street bridge diagram that Brain has come up. Apparently there's mines on the bridge.
I don't understand why there's mines on the bridge, because at the end of the bridge there's a 100-foot wall. So I don't know the goal of putting mines on the bridge, but apparently there are mines on the bridge. I feel like you can go under the bridge, which would probably be a way to avoid the mines, but they want to go on the bridge.
We're not going to explain that. But that's what Duke's in it for. So he's got all the cards. He's got the president in his hands, and which is the biggest card to play. He's got him hostage. So he's pretty much making the demands here. Wants the bridge diagram. Who Brain, I believe, possesses it, and
Correct.
is apparently the only one who knows how to read it. But at this point in the game, I believe Brain and Maggie are still playing like they're on the Duke side and they're not affiliated with Snake at all.
Yes, when Snake gets caught, Brain was like, sorry, he had a gun to my head. That's why I was with him.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So that's a big brain move by Harold.
And he's trying to tell Duke, don't kill him. You have to listen to him. Like, the government's coming. If we kill him, like, we need to, basically figure out what's going on here. But instead, Duke throws Snake into a no-holds-barred cage match with a gigantic son of a bitch, and both of them have bats.
Yeah, they really set it up like this is a gladiator fight, and I was under the impression it was going to be a boxing or or like a MMA match. But they're thrown into this boxing ring, and both handed bats with nails in them.
You have to have the bats with the nails in them, because normal bats just would not do in this situation.
No, so they're going to fight to the death. So this kind of came out of left field for me, but it's an 80s movie. What do you get? At this point, I can't really make too much demands of what I want because they just kind of force feed this stuff down my throat.
Now, back to the Native Americans. While Snake is fighting this big, lumbering mountain man
with a bat.
It looks like a giant, like, Russian that you'd play as in like a Mortal Kombat game. They realize that Snake has this glider, and so they're
Brain
like,
and Maggie.
Brain and Maggie do. So they run off to the top of the World Trade Centers, and they're like, we got to go up to this trade center and get it. As they get up to the top of the trade center,
well, wait a minute. This is after they have the president. Because there's a line.
Yes.
There's a line that mentions Mr. President. So before they even get there, Maggie and Brain I love this scene. They go in, they fool Romero, the creepy Mr. Double
Urban
Double,
Beetlejuice.
Frank Urban Beetlejuice. They pretty much persuade him to let them into the room where they're holding the president, and they just clean house. Like Maggie just boom, 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 just like puts down these
3 shots, 3 confirmed kills.
3 shots. Maggie's awesome.
Efficient.
I love Maggie.
Big Maggie fans.
And then I believe Brain kind of shanks Urban Pennywise Caveman, and he's dead, which I was a fan of because he was just an annoying character. Didn't like him. Yeah, so they get the president. And what was their plan? Were they going to just kind of double
leave
cross?
Snake to die. Yeah. Leave Snake to die. And they're like, we'll take the president. We'll get pardoned for saving the president.
This guy kind of sucks.
Brain sucks.
So they have the president. They're on top of the World Trade Center.
Of course, what happens? A tribe of Native Americans has thrown the glider off of the roof of the World Trade Centers for no reason.
Why are they up there?
Is this the same tribe that flagged down the helicopter? We don't know.
What is with them and aircrafts?
One guy's taking it because Snake has it basically anchored to the top of the World Trade Centers with like a
almost grappling
grapple.
hook.
Yeah. And one Native American just has a tomahawk and he's just taking it to the wire. They do that and then they just shove it off the top of the World Trade Centers and they're just like, yay!
Yeah, they just yeet it off, and then Brain is just like, goddamn Redskins, using a very yesterday word.
I think the president goes, savages.
Oh
like,
no,
wow,
no Brain, no Brain.
Oh.
He's like trying
Brain
to talk up the president, like savages, Mr. President. That's how I knew they had the president with them at this point.
That's right.
Yeah, some good old fashioned American stereotyping and prejudice. So anyway, that happens. I guess I just needed a reason to have the plane not be an option. They're like, we're gonna throw in Native Americans. They're just savages. They just ruin stuff. Just make it the crazies.
Make it that it got hit by lightning. I don't know.
Snake, meanwhile, who is in the bat fight, he kills this guy.
He's getting his ass kicked, and then all of a sudden he just like makes a quick move and just plants the nail into the back of the guy's skull. And then all the people who are watching just start chanting Snake.
In the background, Duke walks away. He's been informed of the president leaving. Some guy comes in and says, everybody listen up, the president's been taken. And everyone kind of excuses themselves from there. Not before Snake activates the tracker. So everyone leaves, and then Snake is just like, okay, I guess no one cares about me. I'm going to walk out of here. Or limp.
And of course, so now we have Maggie, Brain, and the president split with Snake. And Snake has to get to them somehow.
Yeah. Oh, he gets up to the roof. He goes to the World Trade Center to go get to the glider, and then he also sees that it's been thrown off the building.
By Indians.
By those damn Indians.
So we need a ride. Well, good thing we know the cabbie. And they head to the bridge. Now, remember, this bridge has the mines all over it. I don't know why the U.S. government doesn't step in at this point, knowing that the president is not in the hands of Duke, and they could be like, let's roll in and meet him halfway here. It seems like a great time to scramble the jets. Be like, we have them, we're here, feel free to nuke everything else, guys. But no, we have to get all the way to the other end of the bridge and get to some 1940s dumbbell system and like raise them up.
The bridge, speaking of being a minefield, do you really need a map to read it? Because there's pretty much cars and debris in the way. So the only pathway is the open road.
I was confused about where the mines were, because mines have to be buried underground.
They need to be buried in soil.
Because they're pressure activated. So unless somebody has put these mines into the asphalt of the road, into the concrete of this bridge,
and then reapplied said asphalt,
all done post Manhattan Island prison setup, it would be pretty easy to see the mines and avoid them. But of course not. We get a lot of random explosions. Being chased by just Duke. He's the only guy chasing him. It's one vehicle, and it's Duke.
Yes, in his Cadillac.
Yes.
Snake, in the limited space that he can drive, hits a mine, and the taxi cab splits perfectly in half. Doesn't blow up. It's like someone took a big katana and just sliced it in half.
Brain survives. Maggie survives.
Cabby just dies.
Cabby just dies. He may not be dead. He may just be knocked out, but he's just left.
I like to think he's just knocked out. So the rest of these guys are on foot.
Brain's trying to read his diagram.
Yeah.
Now, this part confused me, because he tells everybody, go left, go left.
Yeah.
Snake and Maggie go right.
Oh, the president he leaves. He's like, I'm out.
He gone.
Screw
yeah,
you guys.
he doesn't care about the mines.
He doesn't care about a lot of these people.
Brain goes left where he thinks he should be going, and he
just blows up. He gets launched into the air and dies.
So the diagram's useless. Maggie, in her sorrow, decides that she's just going to die on this bridge with him. I respect Maggie.
Maggie rules. That's what I'm saying. She's like,
yes.
This is my ride or die. I'm just going to take out my gun and start popping off shots.
No, she takes Snake's gun, which I think was irresponsible by Snake.
Oh, she takes it?
Snake tosses it to her. Yeah, she
okay.
looks at him and is like, give me the gun. He tosses it to her.
I mean, no, it's smart because, he's like, hell, yeah, if you're going to stay behind, buy us some time, sure. That's what I need right now. I'll get a gun later.
As we see, she didn't buy much time.
No, she's shooting these shots off at the the car, Duke's car, which by the way has lamp fixtures welded onto the hood.
It jingles like Santa's sleigh.
It's a jingly Cadillac, and she wears this Cadillac to the midsection. I laughed out loud when I saw this.
Pancaked.
I laughed out loud because it's just the comedic value in this scene is that it's just one shot. It's just a wide shot behind Maggie. She's popping off shots, and you just see the car coming. And you're like, okay, they're going to cut away. And
Car doesn't even slow down. It's going like
just
50.
bam. It just smacks Maggie. It's like, dude, this chick is badass. She dies, of course.
Yes. Unfortunately, Duke is unfazed. Duke is unfazed by this head-on collision.
And his his little Captain Crunch get up. What are those things on the shoulder? The little dingly dangly things that
like the tassels.
Yeah, he's got like tassels on the shoulder. This guy's styling. He's funkadelic. You believe
this was nominated for best costumes?
Was it? I mean, I guess they're pretty cool, but it's just not accurate in my opinion. But okay,
not at all.
We got three deaths. Well, Cabby's not confirmed, but yeah, brain is blown up, and Maggie has blunt trauma to the stomach. Duke is chasing Snake on foot. We got the police on the other side of the wall. They're giving the rope down and bring the president up first.
No cover fire. So Duke starts shooting the president, and then Snake's like, no, and he like basically runs over, tackles Duke, disarms him from his gun, punches him in the face, and then runs himself over to the rope while leaving Duke there a little dazed with his gun next to him.
Should have took the gun, Snake.
Should have taken the gun. Should have just ended it right there. There's a lot of things he could have done. So Snake's getting repelled up the rope by like a motorized thing. And then halfway up, it gets stopped by the president. And then the president takes out a machine gun and just blasts Duke to bits. And basically like repeats all the things Duke was saying to him earlier in the movie.
All the taunting.
I'm the best. I'm A1. Yeah, all that stuff. And then the president continues to lift Snake up on the rope. I don't know why he paused it.
He stopped. Wait, did that happen? I thought it just got 100% stuck
happen. No, he hit the little lever.
Okay, weird flex, but all right,
it
Mr.
seemed
President.
like a really odd moment.
Duke is dead. President and Snake have made it up out of the prison, and Snake barely gets the X-ray antidote from the scientist to dissolve those lethal pills that got injected right next to his main arteries.
Yep.
Pretty much it. After that, the president is kind of getting his makeup and hair done after being in a hellscape for 24 hours.
Yeah, he has to give a speech.
By the way, for a movie that takes place in 24 hours, there is very little daylight in this movie.
If any.
It looked like it just was over the course of 5 hours. Just one night. I think there's one establishing shot that has daytime, but the rest of the movie's at night.
Yeah, they save him with that anecdote with 3 seconds left, right? It's like, of course.
I mean,
it's 3 seconds.
Within like the last minute, 30 seconds, somewhere that's way too close to call. You know, as the president is getting his look did, so he can make this live TV appearance because he can't be there in person for this peace summit. There was a whole subplot about a briefcase and a tape that's needed to cool things over with China, Soviet Union. I don't know. I kind of forgot. But basically, that's another main goal for Snake. Snake needs to extract the president and also recover this briefcase that has a tape of evidence.
Cassette tape. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what it is.
Something.
But before it's revealed that Snake switched out the tape, he goes up to the president, and I forget what was said, but the thing that stuck with me was Snake pretty much says, yeah, a lot of people died getting you out of there. And he's pretty much talking about Brain and Maggie. Cabby. R.I.P. those guys. And the president kind of shakes it off, and he's just like, oh yeah, no, I'm very thankful for them. And just kind of like no sympathy, no emotion. Snake, you should be used to that by now. You got no emotion on you.
Yeah, I didn't quite get that because Snake's like seems very off-put that this guy has no emotion to it. But when you think about it,
bro, you got no emotion.
He got no emotion. He killed men. He killed multiple men in that.
He don't care.
Yeah, he does not care.
So the president, I was like, oh, that's kind of a dick move, president. Come on, you just got saved, and that's the best you can do.
I'm on TV in 2 minutes. I'm trying to negotiate a peace deal with the Soviet Union here. Like, sorry, I just got out of a hellscape where I was tortured and my finger cut off. I don't know. I don't know how you're supposed to act in that situation.
I guess losing your finger, I'd be pretty pissed.
I give a little leeway to the president. He's just so in shock. How do you feel? He's like, I appreciate it. I don't know. I got to give this piece something. I don't know.
Well,
I haven't processed everything.
If they played it like how you're doing it right now, it'd be acceptable. But he was just kind of like brash and cold about it. That's all I'm saying.
It's all, yeah, whatever.
All right, we'll give some benefit of the doubt to the president.
The president was made to seem like a really bad guy here, but he didn't really do anything wrong at any point in the game. He just got captured.
They play the tape, I believe, after they go live on air, and it's just a music tape. We go back to Snake, and we learn he switched out the tape, and it's pretty much just a big fuck you to the government.
One thing I wanted to point out at the end there, when the police commissioner basically says, we would make a good team. Like, I have another job for you. And Snake basically tells him off, and he says, all right, Snake. And then Snake Plissken goes, call me Plissken. And this is the callback I want to do from the beginning of the movie when he was telling him, call me Snake. And this guy finally calls him Snake, and he goes, call me Plissken. Is it like, oh, we're not formal or informal anymore? Or we're not buddies, so call me Plissken?
What I got from that was, in the beginning, he's like, call me Snake. That's my badass name. If we're going to be tight, you're going to call me Snake. And that's before he gives him the lethal injection, doesn't tell him about it. A lot of mistrust from there off the jump. And then by the time
he betrayal.
And then by the time he gets back in person with Hawk, he says like, yeah, good job, Snake. And he's like, bro, I lost all respect for you, and we will never be friends. You can call me Mr. Plissken. Thank you very much.
I will say, I don't want to spoil anything for the future. The exact same thing happens in Escape from Los Angeles.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe that'll be on the watch list.
That movie I know a little better, because I was like, wait, was that's this movie? The next movie? Escape from LA is a very similar plot.
Okay.
Highly similar plot.
And anyway, I heard it's not as good, but
sequels are never as good.
Speaking of that wraps up the plot talk. You're watching this movie for the second time. How'd you feel?
It's kind of the same as I remember. It's like an entertaining B movie that catapulted into a quote unquote A movie as a cult classic. But let's be honest with ourselves, it's a B movie.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, with these old movies that are held in regards as classics, you just wonder, was there not enough movies being pumped out then? Because I'll tell you what, if that came out today, it'd be a dime a dozen. There's so much content coming out. So is it just the fact that it happened and action movies were just scarce, or I don't know.
I'd say action movies were scarce.
Well, are these movies like famous because we weren't just having new content being poured out every single week? Or are they actually good?
No, they're not good in retrospect. It's kind of what you said. It's the content every single week. You got to think about it. You had 1 or 2 summer blockbusters. So you're a 15-year-old kid and you get to go to the movies over the summer. And this is the blockbuster. So you see it. And it's all you talk about for a year. For a whole year. That's all you got going on. Yeah. And so it just gets ingrained in your memory. And when you only have so many options, you have to convince yourself that this option is really good. And you have nothing else to compare it to, right? Like, if you're not comparing it to anything, you got to think, like, the premise back then was really cool. It wasn't fucked out like it is now. Mm-hmm. The effects were kind of cool. The character's really cool. We liked that kind of character back then. Today, it's super cheesy. But for the time, you can see why it's great. And then you can see why it's a cult classic, right? It's ridiculous. It's a decent, fun little story. One of the big things I said to myself throughout watching this, I go, if this story was proposed today, it would not be a movie. It would make a really good video game, though.
I won't disagree with that as far as the video game part. I think if it were a movie, they'd have to rework a lot of the stylistic points. Pound for pound, frame by frame, costume for costume. No, you could not remake this movie. If you reinterpreted this movie, because, there's movies like that, like District 9 or grounded post-apocalyptic movies, they can do it right. They can have an outrageous idea of like the island of Manhattan as a prison, and they could do it right. It would just be a completely different movie. So I don't necessarily disagree or agree, but I would play the hell out of that video game.
It's almost like The Dark Knight Rises in a way. I think The Dark Knight Rises takes a lot from this movie, actually.
How so?
Kind of like the isolated island of Manhattan, quote unquote Gotham. One guy basically has to go in, beat the main bad guy. The bridges are all sealed off. It's a lot of these post-apocalyptic movies, kind of like we said, Mad Max had a lot of influence on other movies. But you got to remember, like, these genres didn't really have anything to draw off of like we have now, right? We all have stuff to draw off of. Like, it's hard. We complain all the time. It's really hard to find like an original movie because a lot of these ideas are already put out there. But when you talk about, the idea of like, the post-apocalyptic genre, when you talk about Mad Max, that was 79, this was 81, like it was just really finding itself like a post-apocalyptic genre. So there were no rules to it. They basically made all the stereotypes, like gangs of marauders, like everything falls into chaos. Like these cars are all old and funky, and everybody's out at a bonfire, and crime just
chandelier attached to the hood.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it's like, oh, people are dressed as pirates, and there's Native Americans because there's no rules in a post-apocalyptic world.
It's a sandbox at that point back in the day.
Yeah, 100%.
A couple things you brought up, when you said it's like the Dark Knight, he needs to go and defeat the villain. Who is the villain of this movie?
The villain is Duke.
I disagree. I don't really think it's Duke. I think he's just part of the system. I think the villain's the government.
I think you're really overthinking this.
No, I'm not. Look, Duke he's the leader of the prison and he takes the president. But honestly, I see the government as more the bad guy here because they're the one that deceived Snake and pretty much crossed him right from the jump. They said, hey, here's a job that you can do. And then, oh, by the way, you got 24 hours to do it or you die. They're
the overarching, basically, I guess you could say they're the overarching quote-unquote bad guy.
They're the bad guy.
But the antagonist of the movie is Duke.
I would say Brain's more of an antagonist than Duke. Duke's just doing his thing. He's just rolling down the street in his Cadillac.
Antagonists just do their thing. Thanos is just doing his thing.
No,
doesn't make him an antagonist.
No, Thanos had a very compelling purpose for what he was doing, and we followed him throughout the movie. Duke shows up halfway through the movie and is a plot device. He's an obstacle for Snake.
I think antagonists can be plot devices, though.
Oh, that's a terrible antagonist. Then. I mean, it's
an 80s action movie. I don't know. I
think
maybe it was the Native Americans. Maybe they were the villains. I don't know.
Maybe it was that one, that took a tomahawk to that steel cable. It kind of raised my rating when I thought of it that way because I thought, like, who the hell was the bad guy? I mean, Duke was the surface bad guy. Like, he's in the way and he took the president hostage. But honestly, the government did worse things to our protagonist, Snake.
I agree with that point. I just am not ready to call them like the main antagonist. Now, the interesting point was the movie took a lot of inspiration after the Watergate scandal. So it was inspired after like corrupt government deals.
This was like when I was researching, like John Carpenter was, he kind of made this movie in not retaliation, but just keeping the government held accountable, saying like, hey, they're not all squeaky clean. They can do some shady stuff too. Kind of just like mistrust.
Don't want to put the cart before the horse, but Escape from LA takes that theme to a whole new level.
Well, it seems like we need to add that to the list.
I'm in.
The bad guy in my mind made more sense being the government, and the way it ends makes a lot more sense because Snake basically just says, hey, you know what? Like, I'm part of the system because of the government. And again, the crime being raised 400%, it'd be a lot more helpful if they explained how and how the police force failed, or how we failed as a society, or how the government failed. It had a little bit more context and stakes and who you're trying to root for in this movie, but they just don't really get into it. In retrospect, seeing that this was made off of a mistrust from the government, and that's basically how this movie ends, with a middle finger to the president and the whole operation and police force, it's like, okay, I kind of get the message now.
I will say something I absolutely love is in 80s movies, the punching sound effect. The yeah, the little quick, so that you know a guy's getting punched, because you got to know that a guy's getting punched. One more thing I want to point out was something that I saw in the credits was one of the directors of photography was one Jim Cameron, now going by James Cameron.
Fun fact.
He was a special effects artist, and then he was also added on as one of the directors of photography. So, James Cameron.
Look at that.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. Well, Nick, before we get into our ratings here, I just have a couple questions for you.
Yep.
Do you think this movie has a good idea or a bad idea of the maximum security prison as a plot of land? Because I believe we've spoken about this before.
I believe it to be a good idea.
And was it North Dakota? You said we should just quarantine off and throw all the really bad prisoners in there?
Yeah. See, I don't think you should cut off one of like your industrious sectors, like the island of Manhattan. That is clearly like a very important landmass. Like, you just gave up the World Trade Centers to make the prison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if logistically you could have put those walls anywhere and shipped them anywhere. But no, I mean, I personally am a fan of the idea. I don't like the idea of mass incarceration, of people being kept in cells. So if these guys can go out there and create like dance shows and whatever, and kind of still live their own life, but under their own parameters and away from the rest of society, I think it's a much more humane way to put people in prison. Now, I don't think that, a guy who got a DUI or was selling drugs necessarily be in there, but you're a murderer, like Cabby. Yeah. I think
we don't know if Cabby was a murderer.
The way he handled that Molotov so calmly tells me he's killed a man. But yeah, if you're like the worst of the worst, we're talking like the top 1% of prisoners. It's like, yeah, just toss them in a landmass and let them hash it out away from us, kind of, and give them a little more freedom to create their own little society if they want to.
A quote from you, I'll paraphrase. You pretty much said, hey, you can't play in our society. Go into your own society with other like-minded people like you.
And that's my idea of breaking the law, right? You broke the law, and usually, it has to be really bad in a horrendous way. Basically, we all have a societal contract with each other. Like, I'm not going to go on a shooting spree, or I'm not going to, drive my car 100 miles an hour into a convenience store. I have the ability, but I'm part of a social contract that kind of keeps society going. And so removal from society, I think, is a better way than just like, hey, throwing you in a cage like an animal. That doesn't work either. And it's much more expensive.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. They should have put it on an empty plot of land, but it wouldn't have looked as cool. They got to make it in New York.
Totally.
Which this movie was not really filmed a lot in. It was actually St. Louis.
It might have been just as cool if it was straight from St. Louis. You have like an arch fight scene hanging from the arch. I don't know. I don't know much about St. Louis.
All I'm saying is justice for Fresno Bob. Shout out Fresno Bob. Shout out North Dakota. Maybe he's there.
Final review. Fight.
Nicholas the Jiggles, we've reached the end of our review of this movie, The Watch. We got to kind of wrap it all up with a bow tie of our reviews of this movie. Give it a log line, an honest log line. Rotten Tomatoes, which we don't really it doesn't phase us. It doesn't sway our opinion. It's just the main reference of a score. So the critics on there are giving this an 86%, and the audience is giving this a 77. So you're shaking your head. So I guess I'll start out with you. Why don't you give me your honest log line followed by your popcorn points?
Perfect. So my log line is in a world, because this is the quintessential in a world action movie where the president is trapped on the now prison island of Manhattan. Only one man who is dry and emotionless can save the day. And I give it a 5.7. Let it be a cult classic. Give it an honest rating and let people like it regardless of the rating you give it. I hate when the critics try to give a cult classic like, oh, this is a 90 because it's a cult classic. It's like, no, judge the movie and I'll decide if it's a cult classic. I don't need a critic telling me it's 86 because it's not. It's a 5.7. In and of itself, as a movie, if you didn't know it was a cult classic and you were just watching this as a film student, as a critic, you'd say there are so many plot holes. There's so much unexplained. The writing is meh. Kurt Russell definitely got better later in his career, but the acting in this one, not stellar. It is. It's just a 5. And I might be a little generous even with the 5.7, just standalone as a movie.
Whoa.
That being said, I enjoy it. It's, on our scale, a 5 is a pre-popped store-bought corn.
It's just pre-popped in the bag.
To me, it's a 5.7, but still it's a cult classic and watchable film.
You're making me adjust my points here live on the air.
Well, let me hear for yours.
My honest log line is short and sweet. An eye-patched one emotion outlaw goes on a presidential extraction mission in the hellscape known as 1997 Manhattan. Pretty much to the point. I kind of bounced around on my rating. It was pretty low in the beginning because I thought that was a cheesy movie and what the hell was that ending about? And then I got into the whole government mistrust narrative. I thought, oh, it's kind of cool. And the scores were kind of cool too. The visuals, it's just very recognizable. It's very, like, people know this movie, the pop culture popularity. I was like, oh, maybe I'll give it a little bit higher. You kind of saying everything I was initially thinking. I was like, yeah, it's not that great a movie. This might bite me in the ass later. If I'm giving a movie a 7, I'm just going to say this on the record, a 7 or above, that's a movie I will go out of my way to rewatch.
If it's on TV at 9 p.m., you're up till midnight finishing that movie because it's a good one.
Well, I don't know about all that. Yeah, that's got to be like a 9 or something. And that might bite me in the behind later. I might get called out on it. But I think that's a good standard. Like, if a movie has at least a 7 popcorn rating, that's a rewatchable movie. So with that, I got to give this a 6.4. 6.4 popcorn points from Jaboy. That's, it's fresh popcorn, but it's unseasoned. Not a whole lot to it. I'm not mad at it. I'm not happy with it. It's there. It exists. I've seen it now. And I have no plans to really sit down and watch it again. I kind of experienced it.
Personally, I don't think it set out to be more than what it is. So it achieved what it wanted to achieve, and sometimes it do be like that.
Well, I think that's just a perfect way to wrap it all up there, Nick. That was our watch of Escape from New York by John Carpenter. First time watch for me. 15-year anniversary watch for Mr. Justice. Join us next week when we review another movie.
See you then, friends.